What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Last Word Sports Podcast. I'm your host tonight, Scott Gebertz, and I just want to start off by letting you all know I hope you had a Merry Christmas here at the Last Word. We hope you guys all spent some good time with your family, enjoyed the holidays. But as for the video tonight, we're going to be helping you guys make some money, and we're going to be providing you with our top 5 best bets against the spread for Week 17 of the NFL. So let's get started. Our first game that we think is one of our top 5 is the Indianapolis Colts at the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Colts are 3.5 point favorites. So the Colts are 7-8, and the Jaguars are 5-10. And our notes on the game: Indianapolis beat Jacksonville 33-13 in Week 11, and Nick Foles played in that game for Jacksonville. And when they play on Sunday, the Jaguars will be starting Gardner Minshew, so a different quarterback. But the Jaguars' offense is still terrible with Gardner Minshew. I love the guy. He's a character. But the Jaguars are just a terrible football team. And Jacksonville has started the season 4-4 this year, right? They were in contention for the division crown, right? And they've lost 6 of their last 7 games. All of those losses have been by double digits, so it's proven that they can lose. They can lose by more than 3.5 points. They lose big. They lost to Atlanta by 12 points. Atlanta's not very good. They lost to the Chargers by 35 points. They lost to Tampa Bay by 17 points. None of those teams are going to make the playoffs. Those are all bad losses. Jacksonville, in their last 7 games, has averaged 12.7 points per game. And neither of these teams can really make the playoffs, so it's not like one team, has to fight harder than the other one because they're playing for a playoff spot or anything. As for Indianapolis, Indianapolis still showed a desire and a fight to win, even after being eliminated when they beat the Panthers 38-6 last week. And the Panthers are about the same caliber of team as the Jaguars. So Indianapolis, I know they've lost 4 of their last 6 games since Jacoby Brissett returned from injury. But at the same time, those 4 losses were to Houston, New Orleans, and Tennessee, who are all going to probably be playoff teams. And Tampa Bay, they lost to by 3 points, which isn't really a terrible loss. Tampa Bay's like 7-8. And so Indianapolis's offense, they're 4th in the league in rushing yards per game with 133.2 rushing yards per game. Jacksonville's defense is 28th in the league in rushing yards per game allowed with 139.8. So our verdict is look for a big day from Marlon Mack. The 3.5 point road favorite for a 7-8 team, you'd look at that usually and say that's a lot of points, but Jacksonville is just a terrible football team, and they've already shown that they can lose by double digits to bad teams. Indianapolis is an average team. They should win here. They should win big here. The Doug Marrone, Tom Coughlin regime, it's over in Jacksonville. They're kind of collapsing. Our pick, Indianapolis by 3.5. Our second game is Cleveland at Cincinnati. And the Browns are 2.5 point favorites, and we're picking Cincinnati here. Now, Cleveland is 6-9, and the Bengals are an unfortunate 1-14. But both teams are eliminated from the playoffs. Cleveland is disappointed and disheartened. Cincinnati has already clinched the number 1 pick, so they can safely get a win for their young coach. So while Cleveland is kind of on a down note, hey, we had high projections going into the year. We thought we could make the playoffs, maybe the Super Bowl. They're disheartened, with their failures. While Cincinnati is kind of like, hey, we've sucked this year, but our roster isn't very talented. Now that we've secured the number 1 seed with our loss to the Dolphins, we're chilling. We can go out there, get a good win for our young coach and Zach Taylor, raise the morale in the locker room. Cincinnati's going to fight. And Cleveland has lost 3 of their last 4 games. They lost by 14 to the Arizona Cardinals, who are bad. They lost by 16 to Baltimore, and they lost by 7 to Pittsburgh. So, none of those losses are like terrible other than maybe Arizona, but those are not impressive at all. Cleveland beat Cincinnati earlier in the year by only 8 points, and that was in Cleveland when Cleveland was still fighting for a playoff spot. Now Cleveland's eliminated. Cincinnati also last week went to overtime against the Finns, and it kind of showed that they're at least trying to win games now. They're kind of fighting a little bit more. They're not just giving up like it looked like they were about halfway through the season. And at the end of the day, both of these teams suck. Cincinnati is the worst team, but they're at home, and they're probably going to try to win more than Cleveland. Cleveland's just a mess. Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry, they've given up. They hate Freddie Kitchens, and they want out of Cleveland. Baker Mayfield's terrible. He has 18 interceptions in 15 games, And Freddie Kitchens is a terrible coach and a terrible play caller. He's lost their locker room, and he'll probably be fired after this game at the end of the year. Plus, Myles Garrett is still suspended. This whole Browns organization is just falling apart. Our verdict, look for Cleveland to just give up here and fall apart. Beckham and Landry will get into a fight with Kitchens on the sideline, and he'll be fired after the game. Take the points in the home team. We're going with Cincinnati. Our third game is the New Orleans Saints at Carolina, the Carolina Panthers. We are taking the Saints, even though they're 13-point favorites. The Saints are 12-3, and the Panthers are 5-10. Our notes on the game. New Orleans needs to win this. They right now hold the 3 seed in the NFC, but they can still get the 1 seed or a first-round bye in the playoffs, which would be huge for them. Playing at home in the Superdome is a really big deal for the Saints. In the playoffs, that is. For Carolina, this game is meaningless. They're already eliminated from the playoffs. They fired their coach halfway through the season. They're kind of a mess right now. New Orleans is one of the best teams in the league. They have one of the most talented rosters and one of the best records in the league. Carolina, on the other hand, started the year 5-3, and they've lost 7 straight games since. They fired Ron Rivera mid-season, and they haven't won a game since. Last week, Carolina lost to the Colts 38-6, and the week before that, New Orleans beat the Colts 34-7. The Panthers also started last week. Third-round rookie Will Grier at quarterback, and he had 0 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. And this week, he's starting again against New Orleans. And he was just terrible in his first game, so look for the Saints defense to have a big game against him again here. On the other hand, Carolina's defense is allowing 145.4 rushing yards per game, which is 31st in the league. So look for a big game from Alvin Kamara and another one from Latavius Murray. I expect New Orleans to win by at least 2 touchdowns here, if not more than that. So we're going with New Orleans. Our fourth game is the Philadelphia Eagles at the New York Giants. The Giants are 4.5-point underdogs, and we're picking the Giants. This is kind of counterintuitive because Philadelphia needs to win this game. They beat the Cowboys last week to take first place in the division, and if they win, they're in the playoffs at 9-7. So this is a really big game for them. In contrast, the Giants are eliminated. They've been eliminated for multiple weeks now. There's really no meaning in this game, but my Giants, go G-Men, have proven that they're stupid enough to still try to win games, like last week against Washington when they sacrificed an opportunity to draft Chase Young by beating the Redskins. Philly looks like they're hot because they've won 3 straight games, but all of those games were close, and all of them were against the Giants, Washington, and Dallas, who the Giants and Washington are 2 of the worst teams in the league, and Dallas is 7-8. So those aren't super impressive victories. On top of that, when they played the Giants just 3 weeks ago, that was in Philadelphia, and the Giants led 17-3 in the third quarter of that game. The Giants started Eli Manning in that game, and they were still beating the Eagles for most of the game. The Eagles needed a comeback to win in overtime with a touchdown, and that's against a really terrible Giants team. The Giants now have Daniel Jones back, who's really hot. He had 5 touchdowns last week. So I think this game will be closer than it was last time in terms of the Giants. I think the Giants could actually win this game outright. If not, the Eagles will likely win off of a field goal at the end. I like the Giants as a home underdog, getting 4.5 points. On top of that, Philadelphia is ravaged by injuries still. They're down to their 4th, 5th, 6th wide receivers. Zach Ertz is questionable too. He's one of their best players, probably Carson Wentz's favorite receiving target. He, got banged up against Dallas. Their offense, Philly's offense, it's just not that great. For them to win by 4.5, that's a lot. They only scored 17 on Dallas last week, and they only scored 23, including an overtime touchdown against the Giants 3 weeks ago, and the Giants' defense is bad. So again, Daniel Jones is hot. Look for a big day from him in the air against the 19th-ranked Eagles secondary, allowing 239.3 passing yards per game. Philadelphia, again, they'll probably still win this game. It means more to them than the Giants. But, it's a division rivalry game. The Giants will play tough. It'll likely be a Philadelphia win by a field goal at the end. So take the home team and take the point. Our 5th and final game is the San Francisco 49ers at the Seattle Seahawks. The Niners are 3.5-point favorites, and we're taking San Francisco here. The Niners are 12-3, and Seattle is 11-4. And our notes. This is a really big game, okay? The winner likely gets the number 1 seed in the NFC. If the Niners win, they get the 1 seed in the NFC. And I think the Seahawks actually can too. if both the Saints and the Packers lose. So this is a really big game. The winner also wins the division and gets at least one home playoff game. And so the loser would have to go on the road as a wild card, which would be tough, and they wouldn't get a first-round bye either. They would have to play the first weekend, wild card weekend. The Niners, they have the number one pass D in the NFL in terms of yards per game. They're allowing 165.6 passing yards per game. They have the number two offense in the league in terms of scoring. They're averaging 30.2 points per game. And they have the number two rushing attack on offense. They're averaging 145.1 rushing yards per game, second to only the Baltimore Ravens. Seattle, on the other hand, has the 21st best defense in the league in terms of points allowed, 24.8 points allowed per game. They have the 24th best run defense in the league. They're allowing 117 rushing yards per game, and they have the 27th pass defense in the league. They're allowing 263.5 passing yards per game. Those are pretty bad numbers for a team who looks like a Super Bowl contender. On top of that, San Francisco has kind of been up and down in the last few weeks. They lost to Atlanta at home. So you might be like, this isn't looking great. San Francisco's been too inconsistent. They haven't beaten anybody by a lot of points. 3 points is a lot for a road team. Especially when you consider that the Seahawks already beat the Niners in San Francisco earlier this year. But San Francisco still beat the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans, who are one of the best teams in the league, by 2 points just a couple weeks back. And even though they were losing for a lot of the game to the Rams last week, they came back and beat them. And yeah, the Atlanta Falcons loss was a tough loss. It was a surprising loss, but it was a very close game. The Falcons got a last-second touchdown to take the lead. And even though the Niners have been inconsistent, the Seahawks have looked terrible over the last 3 weeks. They're slumping into the playoffs. They lost 28-12 to the LA Rams, and that was including a Jared Goff pick six. So the offense only scored 6 points against the Rams. That was 3 weeks ago. The Seahawks defense we know has been bad, and if their offense can't score, they're just screwed. And then they beat Carolina. Carolina's lost 7 games in a row. They beat them by 6 points, which is okay. It's not impressive or anything. And then last week, they lost to the Arizona Cardinals by 14 points, 27-13 at home. And that was including the fact that Kyler Murray, the starting quarterback for the Cardinals, got injured, and they had to sub in Brett Hundley, who, was like a third-round draft pick and kind of flopped in Green Bay and then migrated to Arizona, and he's just been a career backup. And he was like 4 of 9 passing, and the Cardinals still crushed the Seahawks. When you're scoring 13 points against the Cardinals and 12 points against the Rams, you can't be trusted. Both those teams are not making the playoffs. You can't be trusted to win crucial games like against the San Francisco 49ers. Seattle also is really struggling with an injury problem because starters like Shaquille Griffin, a cornerback, Quandre Diggs, a DB, Clowney, a defensive end, Jadeveon Clowney, Dwayne Brown, their tackle, and their 2 running backs, Chris Carson, all of those guys are out. They actually re-signed, probably Hall of Fame running back Marshawn Lynch just a couple days ago to come play for them down the stretch. But who knows what Lynch will bring? He's been retired from football. He's probably not in football shape right now, and it's very questionable. I wouldn't rely on him to make a big impact in his first game back against the Niners. On top of that, when Seattle beat San Francisco at San Francisco earlier this year, it was in overtime, and San Francisco missed a game-winning field goal because they had like a backup kicker. Their starting kicker was hurt. Their starting kicker's back now, and additionally, Richard Sherman and George Kittle, who are 2 of the best players on the Niners, were both out for that Seattle game. Now, Seattle has a bunch of injuries, and Sherman and Kittle are both back for the Niners. So, considering the fact that Seattle's really slumping, and their offense has been struggling, and they have a ton of injuries, I would go with the road favorite here, the San Francisco 49ers. I would actually expect them to win by a lot of points. They might even win by double digits, considering how bad the Seahawks have looked against the Cardinals and the Rams. So, I would take the Niners as a 3-point favorite on the road. That's all for tonight, folks. Those are our top 5 NFL picks. If you win some money, be sure to shout us out. I'm Scott Gebertz. Thanks for watching. This has been The Last Word.